The idea of communicating with the dead has fascinated people for centuries. From ancient rituals to modern séances, humanity has long sought contact with loved ones who have passed away. Many claim to have received messages from the deceased, while others warn that such practices are dangerous and deceptive. But what does the Bible say about communicating with the dead? Is it possible, or is it a deception that leads people away from the truth? This exploration delves into historical beliefs, biblical teachings, spiritual perspectives, and scientific analyses of this phenomenon. Ancient and modern practices of communicating with the dead, one ancient traditions and necromancy. Throughout history, various cultures have practiced necromancy, the attempt to communicate with spirits of the dead for guidance, wisdom, or reassurance. Ancient Egypt. Egyptians believed in an afterlife where the dead could still influence the living. They sought guidance from deceased ancestors through rituals and offerings. The Book of the Dead contained spells intended to help the deceased navigate the afterlife and communicate with the living. Babylon and Assyria. Mesopotamian civilizations engaged in necromancy through mediums and oracles who claimed to receive messages from the dead. The Epic of Gilgamesh contains references to summoning spirits for knowledge. Greek and Roman beliefs. The Greeks consulted the spirits of the dead at sacred sites like the Oracle of the Dead in Necromantean. Romans feared spirits returning as ghosts and held ceremonies to appease them, such as the Parentalia Festival, where families honored their ancestors to prevent hauntings. African and indigenous practices. Many indigenous cultures hold ancestral veneration, believing that spirits of the deceased can provide wisdom and protection. Shamans act as intermediaries between the living and the dead, performing rituals to seek guidance from ancestors. 2. Medieval and Renaissance necromancy. During the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, necromancy became associated with forbidden occult practices. Medieval Christianity's view. The Catholic Church condemned necromancy, associating it with demonic deception. Many accused of practicing necromancy were labeled heretics or witches. Alchemy and spirit summoning. Some alchemists and scholars, such as John Dee, sought hidden knowledge through angelic or spirit communication using special symbols and rituals. Witch trials and fear of the occult. Many accused witches were believed to communicate with spirits or summon the dead, leading to widespread persecution during the Inquisition and Salem witch trials. 3. Modern spiritualism and mediums. The 19th century saw a resurgence of interest in spirit communication through the spiritualist movement. Séances and mediums. Figures like the Fox sisters and famous mediums claim to relay messages from the dead, popularizing séances and spirit communication in Western culture. Ouija boards and automatic writing. Popularized as ways to communicate with spirits, these tools remain widely used today, with many believing they open doors to the supernatural. Near-death experiences and ghost sightings. Some people claim to have encountered deceased loved ones during NDEs or supernatural experiences, further fueling the debate over whether spirits can interact with the living. Electronic voice phenomena, EVP, and modern ghost hunting. Many paranormal investigators claim to capture voices of the dead using recording devices, a practice that continues to gain traction in the digital age. New Age beliefs and channeling. Some modern spiritual movements teach that individuals can act as channels for spirits, receiving messages through meditation or altered states of consciousness. The Bible's perspective on communicating with the dead. The Bible explicitly addresses attempts to communicate with the dead, warning against it and highlighting the dangers involved. 1. Biblical condemnation of necromancy. The Bible forbids necromancy and spirit communication, linking it to deception and demonic influence. Leviticus 19:31. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Deuteronomy 18:10-12. Let no one be found among you who consults the dead. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. Isaiah 8:19. When they say to you, consult the mediums and spiritists who whisper and mutter, should not a people consult their God? Galatians 5:19-21. The acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, idolatry, and witchcraft. Those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. 2. The story of King Saul and the Witch of Endor. 1 Samuel 28. One of the most famous biblical accounts of attempting to communicate with the dead is King Saul's visit to the Witch of Endor. Desperate for guidance, Saul sought a medium to summon the prophet Samuel's spirit. Samuel appeared, but instead of offering comfort, he pronounced judgment on Saul for his disobedience. This passage is often cited as a warning against necromancy. 3. What happens after death? Biblical view on the afterlife. The Bible describes death as a final separation between the physical world and the spiritual realm, with no interaction between the two. Ecclesiastes 9:5. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even their name is forgotten. Luke 16:19-31. Jesus' parable of Lazarus and the rich man shows that the dead are fixed in their afterlife destinies and cannot return to communicate with the living. Hebrews 9:27. It is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment. Job 7:9-10. As a cloud vanishes and is gone, so one who goes down to the grave does not return. The dangers of spirit communication. Deception or reality. Many who attempt to contact the dead report experiences that seem real, but are they truly encountering spirits of deceased loved ones? Or could they be something else? 1. The deception of familiar spirits. Some biblical scholars and theologians argue that spirits encountered during séances are not actually the dead, but demonic entities masquerading as loved ones. 2 Corinthians 11:14, and no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. 1 John 4:1. Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. Matthew 24:24. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. 2. Psychological and scientific explanations. Science offers alternative explanations for spirit communication, subconscious influence. Some experiences may be influenced by grief, leading people to perceive what they want to hear. Cold reading techniques. Many mediums use psychological tricks to make vague statements seem accurate. Hallucinations and sleep paralysis. Some supernatural encounters may result from neurological conditions rather than actual spirits. Confirmation. Bias. People tend to interpret ambiguous messages as personal and meaningful, reinforcing belief in supernatural communication. Neuroscientific theories. Studies suggest that heightened emotional states can cause the brain to perceive voices or images that aren't there. Conclusion: should we seek to communicate with the dead? The Bible strongly warns against attempting to communicate with the dead, portraying it as spiritually dangerous and deceptive. While some believe they have encountered lost loved ones, biblical teaching suggests that such experiences may be misleading. Whether through theological or scientific lenses, the pursuit of contact with the dead remains one of the most controversial and mysterious spiritual topics in history. For believers, seeking wisdom and comfort from God rather than spirits remains the biblical path to truth and guidance.